back to another vlog. We are kicking things off with my new garden accessory tool. I don't really know what to call this, but I purchased a compost tumbler. So I've been wanting to compost for forever, and as you can imagine, there are a million different methods, lots of different opinions. Clearly Junie has opinions on this, and it's really hard to make a decision, and a lot of people are like, just do it, but there's a lot of things to consider, and I didn't want something that would attract pests, and obviously I wanted something that was manageable because some compost piles are huge, and to make them turn into compost you need to turn them. We don't have big equipment. I didn't want to sign myself up for something that required me hiking out there with a pitchfork every day to turn the pile, so I figured it was best to start small. I did a little research on compost tumblers, and before investing a ton of money into something that was a little more longer term durable, I decided to start with a $70 basically like plastic tumbler. So I'll flip the camera and show you what I decided on. So here she is. This is our tumbler. It has two compartments, which is great because you can add your scraps and fill things up on the one side, and then once that's about 3/4 full, you just let it do its thing to turn to compost, and in the meantime you can be adding scraps and waste to the other side. So you don't have to just fill it up and wait. If you keep adding scraps to this, it just never has the chance to turn into compost, so eventually you do have to just let it kind of break down. It's not very big, so it's relatively easy to turn. Obviously it gets a little heavier once you start adding things to it, but turning is a very important part of the process because if you just let it sit there, it's not going to break down very fast. And as it is, it's already going to take, 3 to 6 months depending on what I add and how much I tend to it. So I'll keep you posted on the process. There are all kinds of things to know about what to add to your compost, how to get it to break down faster, etc. The general rule of thumb is 1 part green, 2 parts brown, or 3 parts brown. Brown waste is like dried leaves, cardboard, paper towel rolls, pine needles, things like that. And greens are like your clippings from the garden, your eggshells, your cut tomato ends, things that you would normally throw away when you're prepping dinner. You don't want to put meat or dairy, things like that will attract more pests, so it's best to avoid that. But other than that, you kind of just give it a go and you learn. Like if it's too wet, you want to add more browns to like kind of help absorb the moisture. If it's not wet enough, you add more of that. So it's all about learning, finding that balance, but at the end of the day, it's a really nice way to turn what you normally would throw away into usable compost for your gardens. So right now I'm kind of thinking about where I want to put it. I don't want to put it too close to the house where it could attract pests that could like find a nice cozy home in our house. But I want it to be close enough that it's easy to get to. If it's too far away, I think I'll be less likely to use it. So I'm considering the back corner of the garden or kind of up against the rock wall on the other side of this fence. So I'm going to try it in both locations, see how it looks, and then we'll make a decision. I enlisted Matt to help me carry this, and he actually made a really good point. Obviously you want it to be in the sun, so that helps generate heat. And over in this garden area over here, it gets more shady more often, so we actually put it on the corner of our back bed here, which I think is fine because it's still easily accessible, and we'll start adding things, and hopefully over the next several months we will have a small batch of homemade compost that we can apply to the garden beds. This is really easy to dump out. A lot of like the reviews were like, oh my gosh, the holes are so small, but honestly all you need to do is rotate the hole down here and put a bin or even a tarp, and then you can just slide it open, it'll drop there, and then you pull your bucket out or your tarp and you add it to your garden beds. So important not to overthink it, but when we get to that point I will show you how I do it. So I'm very excited about this now, to have our own way of making compost. Obviously you can just make a pile on the ground, it can be as simple as that, but like I said, I wanted something that we could hopefully contain, keep from pests, and have on a more manageable scale to see if it's actually something we're into and we're going to use, and then if it is, we can scale up our operation. We are actually now headed to a new brewery called the Lost Cowboy, and it is on Amherst Street in Nashua or Amherst, I don't know, it borders the line there, New Hampshire, and we're we're excited because this is owned by the Michael Timothy's Dining Group, and they have a couple of restaurants. One of Matt's favorites for seafood around here is called Surf, and what was the other one called? Do you remember? M&T's Local. Oh, and Buckley's, yeah. So they've got a ton of great restaurants around this area in like southern New Hampshire, and we're excited about this one because it's a totally different vibe, and of course it's a brewery, which they haven't done before, and they just recently opened. So we're gonna go see what it's all about, and I will bring you along. Hanging the other day after dinner. It's actually Thursday and it's been a week, let's just say that. So I wanted to catch you up, and then I've got some other updates. So Lost Cowboy Brewing Company, it was great, like really cool new space. It's huge inside. They have a cool outdoor seating area on this little body of water, which is really pretty, and it was just a nice new flavor. Like, we don't have a lot of barbecue places, and if we do, they're not the greatest. So yeah, it was exciting to check it out. It's a little misleading because it's the Lost Cowboy Brewing Company, so you would expect it to be more like brewery forward and less food restaurant forward, but when you walk in, it's like a normal restaurant with this massive bar down the middle, tons of seating, decorated in this cool like Western theme, and I don't think they have very many of their own beers yet. I got the pulled pork. I'm looking at the menu because I'm already forgetting what I got. I ended up getting the pulled pork, which also had the brisket on it. I don't know that I knew that when I got it, but I'm so glad I did because the brisket was excellent. Pulled pork was fine, just like regular pulled pork. I wasn't like blown away, but the brisket, like, that was delicious. Matt got the chicken sandwich, and I think he rated it like a 7 or a 7.5 out of 10. He's very specific about his chicken sandwiches, so I think he said that was pretty decent. So good food for the first time. They've got a pretty big menu though, so definitely worth checking out again and trying some other things. My one complaint is that they didn't have like a mocktail menu, and I feel like that's becoming more of a popular thing, and it always bothers me because bars have everything you need to make drinks for cocktails. So like, it would be so easy to have a few like mocktail mixes on your menu that are just fun and kind of out of the ordinary for people who don't drink. But I know that some places don't do that, so you kind of have to like ask or make your own. But anyway, all in all, really great experience. Definitely will go back. Nice to have a place like that that's just a little bit different than all the rest, and excited to try some different food the next time we go. Next up, I wanted to show you the little compost bin I got for the kitchen to collect our scraps in here before I actually bring it out to the compost tumbler, because obviously we're not bringing them out every single night when we like prepare dinner. So I totally copied our friends Kristen and Max. They have this cute little bin that they put under their sink on the door, and it's just easy when you're like cleaning up, you can drop your scraps in there. The bags that go inside of it are compostable, so they will break down as well, which is very important. I know people who also don't even use a bag and they just take the bucket and dump it out, but I want to try to keep it clean so it doesn't get stinky. And yeah, so let me show you that. So these cabinets are directly under our sink. When you open the door, I've just got this little bin that's propped up on a little hook, so you can take it off so that it's easy to empty and switch out the bag, and you can plop it right back on like that. I love it because it's got this little handle, so if you just pull it, it just slides forward so you don't lose the top. You don't have to deal with it like flying off and dropping on the ground. You can easily replace the bags by taking the whole top off with this little white rim. It just pops out. You can pull the bag out, tie it up, put a new one in. I will say, I'm trying to not show you the food inside, but This is just like a little wobbly, and I know that's the design because there's a little spring here, and these guys are just these like tiny flimsy pieces of plastic. So you do kind of have to be careful, because if you're getting a little aggressive, I feel like the springs could pop off or those little arms could break. But usually, you know, it's as simple as just lightly pulling forward and it kind of pops down. So as long as you're aware of that, it should hold up just fine. But it's a great size. It's not too big so that it doesn't get super smelly because the food's sitting there a while, but it's big enough that you don't have to like empty it out every single day. So now when we're working out the sink, if I'm dumping scraps, I can just open this up, pop it in here, and that's that. All that said, I know a lot of you have found my channel through the IKEA HYLTARP couch video. So I thought, because lots of people had questions about it, I would give you a little 4-month review and answer a few of the common questions I've gotten about it.
Really, this couch was purchased for this little diva princess. Look at her. Hello, my love. Hi, baby. You tell people that the couch is excellent. Yes, Puppy thinks it's perfect. She says, excellent couch, you should get it too.
Alright, so this is the sofa I'm referring to. I have a blanket covering it because the dogs always sit over there, and it just minimizes the amount of times I have to take the cover off to wash it. But I have washed the covers. Obviously, this is a cream couch, and with dogs allowed on the furniture, it does get dirty. You can see that there are a few footprints here, and they wash great. They come off, I turn them inside out, put them in the wash on gentle, and I actually dry them with no heat, and then I hang dry them to like fully dry. So I do just try to treat them carefully, but a lot of people have asked if it has broken in because it's a little bit stiff to start. And I will be honest, we don't use this couch as like our daily couch. This is the sitting room where, you know, I might work, the dogs hang out, I'll read a book, but I'm not spending hours and hours on this couch. So I would say it's like, for me personally, I think it's pretty comfortable. I think it has softened a bit because I often sit right here in this middle area. But I suspect it would break in a lot more if you used it more regularly. The pillows, as you can see, this is a seat for Junie. They do get smushed a bit, but you can just like kind of punch them and they'll fluff right back up. Obviously I didn't do a great job, but all the pillow covers have also been washed, which is super easy to do. I wash these probably the most, these small little covers, and there's little pillow inserts so you can just pop those out, wash the covers. The rest of it stays relatively clean and you don't really need to wash it. I think this is like a smudge from a vacuum, so I need to figure out how to get that out, but that was not the couch's fault, that was me. You can see like footprints and like, you know, indents when you sit on it, but like usually when I'm done, I'll just kind of wipe them away, and it doesn't look overly worn, which is one of my pet peeves. It does right now because I just kind of have been touching it, but it's really not bad. So I would rate this probably like, I don't know, an 8 out of 10. I have no complaints, but it's an IKEA couch. Like, this is not a luxury couch. So yeah, it's not perfect, and you've got to go into it with that expectation. This cover, the chase cover, is the most annoying one to get off because it's tight and it's got like the zipper underneath, but it can still be taken off, it can still be washed. All in all, I have no complaints. It's definitely one of my favorite purchases, and we all enjoy it very much, especially Puppy. Look at her, that's her corner. This is not the easiest thing to put together, but it's definitely doable, especially if you're familiar with IKEA furniture. Like, you know how it goes. It's not complicated, there's just lots of parts and pieces, and some of the boxes are a bit heavy, so just be aware of that. Don't try to be a hero. Try to share the load if someone can help you move things around. Once Matt helped me get them in the house, I was kind of able to shimmy them into place, so it was manageable, but they are quite large and a bit unwieldy, so if you're not comfortable with that, grab a buddy and build it together. And yeah, just like expect to spend a few hours setting it up because it will take a little bit of time. There's just lots of parts, but totally doable, and honestly, there's no better feeling than putting together IKEA furniture. There's a lot of pride attached to that. So if you have any other questions, please do let me know. I also have the original video where I was putting it together, so if you want to watch that, I will put it on the screen for you to check out. But yeah, so still 100% recommend. It's a great budget option for this skirted look, and we've been enjoying it ever since we got it in here. Now, for the not so exciting news. We have worms. Not me. My garden has worms. And no, they're not the regular good kind of worms. They're the invasive, terrifying, snake-like worms called Asian jumping worms. And you might be wondering, what the heck are those? And I too felt that way last year. But then I learned about them, only to discover having them myself not long after learning about them. They're really gross. They are currently living in our raised garden beds, my oasis. And they produce asexually in large quantities. So just one worm can create a huge population. What is the problem with them, you might ask? Well, these worms eat organic matter voraciously. Like, they just scarf it down. And then they relieve themselves, which is called castings. That's what comes out the other end. And it happens really fast, and they can cover a lot of ground. And basically what they're doing is they're eating the organic matter at the top few inches of your soil, so that really expensive, juicy, nutritious compost is just being scarfed up by these worms, which in turn changes the structure of your soil, so it can no longer retain moisture at that top level, and it creates more erosion because these castings just kind of wash away. And it's one kind of problem in your gardens, but it's a problem on another scale in like forests, because while they're eating all the organic matter on the ground, it's destroying the ecosystem where plants live, and shallow-rooted plants can't really be supported when the top few inches of soil isn't structural, it's just loose castings. So the undergrowth starts to die, which means the wildlife starts to go away because that plant life is no longer thriving. And similarly, tree roots start to become exposed because that soil around them, which is just being munched on, is just eroding away. And, you know, slowly but surely the forests start to deteriorate, and we don't want to see what that looks like. So I will bring you out to the garden to show you how I figured out that I had them, but I'm not going to show you the worms. I'm not going to show you pictures of worms or videos of worms, because quite honestly, it's a scene from Fear Factor, and I don't want to subject you to that if you have no interest and it grosses you out like it grosses me out. I have just spent hours and hours and hours reading research papers, watching webinars, YouTube videos, as much as I can to figure this out. But sadly, right now, there's no way to eradicate them. The only option is to deal with them, manage them, try not to spread them, and try not to let them destroy your joy in the garden. So we're gonna go out to the garden. I'll show you what I'm seeing on the surface of the soil, which clued me into these, and I will explain to you how I've started extracting them from the soil to try to reduce the population, which minimizes worms that become adults, which make cocoons, which hatch the next season. So, to the garden. Okay, so I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see this because of course it just rained, but if you look very closely at where I'm pointing my stick, you can see what kind of looks like this tiny pile of coffee grounds almost. Like, it really does look like miniature worm poo. Same thing right here. It's like these little piles of castings, and over here as well. Now, to the average gardener, that just looks like regular soil. But as you start to look closely and you look across the surface of all of your beds, you will notice that those little castings are everywhere. And the top surface is starting to look like someone just sprinkled coffee grounds everywhere. So I noticed something maybe a week ago, and I just like told myself, nope, I don't have them. That's definitely not it. I'm overthinking it. And I could not stop thinking about it, and I started going down the rabbit hole of researching. And every day I came out to the garden and noticed more and more, and eventually it sank in and I realized that I probably had them. There is a method you can do to extract them and see if you actually have them. All you need to do is take a 1/3 cup of ground mustard, pour that into 1 gallon of water, dissolve it, and then you pour that over a small section of your soil. You'll know within a very short amount of time, like a few seconds, these things will come shooting to the surface. And they thrash like crazy. They do not like to be disturbed. And that is where the name jumping worm comes from. They appear to jump, but they're really just thrashing so crazily that they kind of flop and fly in the air. They also move like snakes. They literally like slither across the soil instead of kind of like inchwormy and just like moving very slowly. So their fast movements are what catch people off guard a lot of the times. Now, right now they're babies. So I am actually doing this extraction method little by little and plucking out baby worms with tongs and a bag and disposing of them properly, which is in a sealed bag where they will unfortunately die, and putting them in the trash. You do not want to spread these. You don't want to let them live and pass them to someone else or anywhere else on your property, because if they get to the adult stage, they will be able to produce cocoons, which are basically eggs for the next season, and those will overwinter. The adults will die, and then the cocoons will hatch the next year and you'll be right back where you started. Like I said, there's no way to eradicate them. You kind of just have to learn to live with them. But my theory is that if I work pretty diligently at picking out these baby worms and the teen worms, it will minimize the population that gets to the adult stage that is able to produce cocoons. It is also far less terrifying to collect tiny baby worms, despite how many come to the surface, which is a little bit freaky. But I cannot imagine myself out here picking up 4, 6, 8-inch worms. Like, that sounds terrifying. I don't even like, I hate snakes. I don't like anything that slithers. I don't even like bugs, okay? Don't ask me why I started a garden, but here we are. So yeah, I'm trying to get ahead of it by collecting as many of them as I can. But honestly, it's crazy how many there still are. You can see like these minuscule little baby white worms that are just hatching. They literally look like pieces of hair. Like, that's how tiny they are. And you just know that they're gonna grow up and you're gonna have to pick those out. So, you know, there's debate on whether that's even fruitful, but it does make me feel a little bit better, and hopefully I will have less big worms to deal with and can minimize the spread of them to other parts of our property. I just had to change my battery, but that's the bummer news for this week. This one really rocked me. I felt like I got punched in the gut, and I was just so heartbroken and upset about it, because my garden is my happy place, and the last thing I want is for snake worms to be flying out of the soil when I'm digging in there with my bare hands. It's just not pleasant. Not to mention they're eating all that good compost and nutrients that you worked so hard to put in there, and they're just like munching on it like it's free food. So that doesn't feel good, but I'm not the only one dealing with them. There's tons of research going on, and I do hope that in my lifetime there is some kind of solution to manage them, at least in our gardens and our surrounding properties. But if I can stop the spread in my own property and spread the word so other people are aware of them, the best way to kind of prevent the spread I've seen is don't share plants. I know. Don't share plants if you knowingly have them. If you don't, just check before you share plants. Keep an eye out for that coffee ground soil. Try to buy bare root plants, because there's not soil and possible cocoons kind of living in the roots. And you know, if you go to parks and other places that might have them, wash your shoes, brush your boots off, get rid of any clumps of dirt that could be carrying cocoons before you get in your car and come home. And lastly, if you're buying products like mulch, compost, soil, check with the people you're buying from. See if they heat it to a certain temperature that will kill the cocoons and the worms. It can be a little tricky because brands might do that, but then they sell them to garden centers who keep them on the ground, which can attract them. So it's a slippery slope, but basically be informed, do your research, know what to look for, and do your best. And if you get them too, we're in it together and we'll figure it out. We will continue to love our gardens and grow what we can and support our ecosystems, and we will not let the worms get us down. I put my first bucket of compost from the kitchen in here the other day. Woo! All that water just flung on me. So I've been coming out here to spin my tumbler, which honestly brings me a lot of joy considering the worm debacle this week. It's very satisfying and I'm excited to see this thing get to work. Woo! There's like flies in there. I don't know what I thought was going to happen when I opened that, but I need to get more brown waste in here because the greens are really easy to collect from the kitchen, but I need to get some browns in there to kind of balance things out. So that'll be my goal over the next few days. My sunflowers over here are looking nice and big, so I'm very happy about that. I would be thrilled to have some nice big yellow sunflowers back here this summer. So hopefully nothing else takes them out and they grow big and strong. I've got some cool varieties, so I'm excited to see what does well. Look at these potatoes. This row is doing excellent. The others are more sporadic. Last week when we were out here in this garden, I saw these little, what I thought were scapes growing on the tops of the garlic, and I thought they were edible, but I wanted to look it up. And while I was out here, I was reminded, and the internet says the long curly green stems and flower buds of hardneck garlic are called garlic scapes. They're edible, they can be eaten raw or sauteed and cooked in meals. So I'm going to have to try harvesting some of these, and I will let you know how those taste. I'm gonna leave them on here for now, but when we have a recipe in mind, I'll come out here and clip a few and let you know how they are. I was also noticing that the shallot was producing these little, like, what I thought were flowers, and I just looked that up, and it said that if you keep these on the plant will put its energy into producing seeds. So if you want the energy to go into the bulb production, you've got to cut these off. So I need to get my clippers and trim all these little buds off. I just came over to my flower bed here by the driveway, and I have so many buds on my flowers. Look at this zinnia. I'm so excited for all these to pop. These are the things that bring me joy. Despite all those crazy worms, we can still have things grow. These beds, to my knowledge, do not actually have worms, so I am crossing my fingers that it stays that way, because if I can have a few beds that are free of them, at least I can find peace in some of the gardens. These are the dahlias. We've got 8 of 11 in this bed popping up so far. Look at the flowers in these planters on the porch. They're getting so big already. Like, I feel like this plant has tripled in size. This has definitely doubled or tripled. These purple ones are just going crazy. So I'm excited to see that. They're a little slower up here, but I suspect because the sunlight is just a little different. But they're coming along. Hey, it's me. My mom is actually coming to visit this weekend, so I'm just gonna hang out with the dogs for a few, burn off some energy with them, and then head in to start making some dinner. I've got a few things that still need planting, and not sure what the, oh my gosh, the wreath that is haunting me. We're gonna look this way. Yeah, not sure what's on the docket for this weekend. If we do anything fun, I will bring you along. There are a couple things in Boston that we might check out, but all weather dependent. It's no fun to be walking around in the rain, so we'll play it by ear. just returned from Boston. We went to see the Red Bull Cliff Diving World Series event, which was very cool. I went several years ago and we didn't have as good of a spot to see the platforms, so you kind of got glimpses of the divers, but this year we could actually see them both on the platform and some of their entries, which was really cool. So this is a series they do, I think it's every year. I'm looking at the website now, but they go to different cities around the world and compete. And if you love these kinds of sports, it's just a fun thing to be a part of. I used to be a diver, so I always love any opportunity to watch diving, whether it's on a springboard or platform, and I'm also very excited for the Olympics coming up this summer. I will include a link to the Red Bull cliff diving events in the description below if you're interested in checking them out. I believe the next one is in Italy. They do Ireland, Norway, Canada, and Turkey. So if you're in any of those countries, you might be in a place to go watch one of them. After the event, we went to Lola Burger for lunch, which was just around the corner from the museum where the event was held, and that was delicious. And then we headed home. Matt mowed the lawn. Mom and I pulled Virginia Creeper off of the rock wall along the road. So that's all cleaned up, and now we're just winding down for the day. So I'm gonna wrap the video up here, but hopefully next week we'll be back to normal and catch up on some of our gardening tasks, and hopefully have time to get the gutter up for the rain barrel, and I'm sure plenty of other things that I'm not thinking of at the moment. I think we're going to a baseball game on Thursday, so we'll bring you along to that. But anyway, if you liked the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe for future updates, and I will catch up with you again